This is when the Bible comes alive. From a geographic standpoint, historical standpoint, the mountain across the way is Hamoray. It is the hill of the teacher, the hill of the seer, um, uh, the place where the Midianites would have been camped. They would have come across the Jordan River as they did continually. Remember the Ishmaelites, the Midianites, they would come over, they would come into these valleys, they would raid all of the crops and so forth, and many times they would then go down through one of the passes, either Megiddo or a pass that goes into a valley named Dotan. We know it as Dothan. And on one of those journeys, the Ishmaelites and the Midianites, as they went down, they took Joseph with them. And all of this is because of this valley that was so fertile. And so it was continually filled with raiders who would come in and steal the crops. And so that's the background of this story that Jeremy is going to read. This is Harod Springs. It turns into what is called a river in the Bible, but it would be what we call a creek that goes all the way down to the Jordan. It goes past, right just beside Bet-Shan, which we're going to next, and we'll cross it over to actually get into it. This time of the year it's running well, but it runs all year long. And so not far from here, just a little bit to the west of us, would have been Jezreel, the place where Ahab and Jezebel would have had their palace, and Naboth's vineyard would have been just below that. Literally, when you go back out on the highway, if you look left, you'll see a stand of trees about a mile and a half up the road. That is Jezreel. And so all of these things happen right here. And so we're going to read the story, and you've just got to be thinking, thousands of men have been marching around. And the story he's going to read, God said, if I give you victory, you're going to think you did it. And so I'm going to make sure that there's a few of you so that it will be obvious that God did it, and it wasn't by your power. Come on. And so let's hear the story.
So Gideon and his army got up early and went as far as the spring of, how'd you say that? Harod. The armies of Midian were camped north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many warriors with you. If I let all of you fight the Midianites, the Israelites will boast to me that they saved themselves by their own strength. Therefore tell the people, whoever is timid or afraid may leave this mountain and go home." So 22,000 of them went home, leaving only 10,000 who were willing to fight. But the Lord told Gideon, "There are still too many. Bring them down to the spring, and I will test them to determine who will go with you and who will not." When Gideon took his warriors down to the water, the Lord told him, "Divide the men into two groups. In one group, put all those who cup water in their hands and lap."
Hold on. Look here. Look at he is a soldier. He's going to demonstrate. He said, "Read it again. Read it again. Here's the separation. Look at this humble servant over here." And, here is the two differences. As Jeremy reads it, he'll act it out.
In one group, put all those who cup water in their hands and lap it up with their tongues like dogs. In the other group, put all those who kneel down and drink with their mouths in the stream. Only 300 of the men drank from their hands. All the others got down on their knees and drank from their mouths in the stream. The Lord told Gideon, "With these 300 men, I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home." So Gideon collected the provisions and ram's horns of the other warriors and sent them home. But he kept the 300 men with him. The Midianite camp was in the valley just below Gideon. That night the Lord said, "Get up, go down into the Midianite camp, for I have given you victory over them. But if you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah. Listen to what the Midianites are saying, and you will be greatly encouraged. Then you will be eager to attack." So Gideon took Purah and went down to the edge of the enemy camp. The armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east had settled in the valley like a swarm of locusts. Their camels were like grains of sand on the seashore, too many to count. Gideon crept up just as a man was telling his companion about a dream. The man said, "I had this dream, and in my dream a loaf of barley bread came tumbling down into the Midianite camp. It hit a tent, turned it over, and knocked it flat." His companion answered, "Your dream can mean only one thing. God has given Gideon, son of Joash the Israelite, victory over Midian and all its allies." When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed in worship before the Lord. Then he returned to the Israelite camp and shouted, "Get up, for the Lord has given you victory over the Midianite hordes." He divided the 300 men into 3 groups and gave each man a ram's horn in a clay jar with a torch in it. Then he said to them, "Keep your eyes on me. When I come to the edge of the camp, do just as I do. As soon as I and those with me blow the ram's horns, blow your horns too, all around the entire camp, and shout for the Lord and for Gideon." It was just after midnight, after the changing of the guard, when Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the Midianite camp. Suddenly they blew the ram's horns and broke all their clay jars. Then all 3 groups blew their horns and broke their jars. They held the blazing torches in their left hands and the horns in their right hands. And they all shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." Each man stood at his position around the camp and watched as all the Midianites rushed around in a panic, shouting as they ran to escape. When the 300 Israelites blew their ram's horns, the Lord caused the warriors in the camp to fight against each other with their swords. Those who were not killed fled to places as far away as Beth Shittah near, yeah, that was great, Zerah, and to the border of Abel Meholah near Tabbath. Then Gideon sent for the warriors of Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh, who joined in chasing the army of Midian. Gideon also sent messengers through the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down to attack the Midianites. Cut them off at the shallow crossings of the Jordan River at Beth-barah." So all the men of Ephraim did as they were told. They captured Oreb and Zeb, the 2 Midianite commanders, killing Oreb at the rock of Oreb and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb, and they continued to chase the Midianites. Afterwards, the Israelites brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon, who was by the Jordan River.
Thank you, Jeremy. There are so many leadership lessons for those of you who deal with people, who are in the Lord's work. And what I want to stress to you is the same tactics. Over the next 2 weeks, there's going to be people here that are warriors in America. FBI, CIA, Navy SEALs, others. And we're going to bring them here because they're going to be talked to about the tactics that were used by Gideon, were used in 1936 during the Arab blood rights by a great friend of Israel. As a matter of fact, he's called the Friend. And I'll talk to you about him as we go down the road, perhaps, or later on, because we need to move along. It's a good story. But the same tactics that are used here in Gideon's victory over the Midianites are still being used today, now throughout the Western world and around the world, to render those who are enemies of Israel and those who are needing to be silenced. They use the same tactics that Gideon does because God gave him a great victory. And just let me say this from a leadership standpoint. Life is way too short for us to learn from our own successes and failures.
Amen.
We have to learn from the successes and failures of others.
Yeah.
Not just their failures, but their successes. And this is a perfect example of that being carried on Now remember, this was during the period of the judges that started when they came in, and I believe the Exodus was 1446 BC. And so the period of judges lasted after the conquest for 350 years. And this dates back before the United Kingdom. So we're talking about tactics that Gideon used here that are over 3,000 years old, and they are so well organized and spoken of that they are still being used today. This is where it happened. You're here. This is where Gideon was used by God to render a great victory for Israel, and we're still talking about him today.
Yeah.
Let's make our way to Bet Shan.